Welcome to our first episode of the 2025 season for preseason testing.
This is so exciting, like finally they're back on track and it's not like from a Twitter little video. We can actually watch it. But before that, can we talk about F175?
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
Carlos and Alex were having a blast. They were thoroughly
poor
enjoying
Max.
it.
Poor Max.
Oh, can I just tell you, I don't know what Red Bull wanted to achieve with that, but I was like, where are they? I couldn't find. Also, what was Liam Lawson wearing?
How do you miss the dress code that badly? Come on.
That was on Red Bull's fault. They should have told him the dress code, but I was like,
it's a reveal. Come
when
on.
you went to meet Max, you both drove together, weren't you? Like, oh, you're in a suit.
Let me go change.
Like,
what?
But also I really liked how we had a whole like livery reveal for cars that look exactly the same. The only one that was like really different was V-Carb, which was insane. I love V-Carb's livery.
I mean, the Ferrari livery is noticeably different.
It's ugly, sorry. If they got rid of that red and blue stripe HP thing and not have 18 different HP logos, I would like it.
Yeah, you're telling me.
I like the shade of red. I just hate the white and the HP. I hate it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
But anyways, that's what we have to say about F175. So let's get into winter testing. So overall, winter testing takes 24 hours over the course of 3 days. Usually they have an AM session with a driver and a PM session with a driver. Sometimes they do like one driver one day, another driver the other day, and then split it up between drivers. So that's how winter testing does not reflect on how the season's going to go for the watchers. It's for the teams.
Yeah.
It's very important for the teams. It's how they get their data, what runs they're going to do. Like for us that don't have the data, we're like, oh my gosh, yay, top of the times. And then we're like, oh, what happened? You were at the fastest car. Why are we DNFing every race?
But drivers do usually say they know, like at the end of the season, they were like, yeah, we knew it was going to be good or we knew it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
From winter testing when we first got in the car.
Fernando Alonso is so excited. He was like, on to Australia, let's go. And he did like 16 O's. That means it's a good car, everybody. That means it's a good car.
Charles Leclerc's been all happy smiles and happy emojis. That's a championship car right there. I know it.
I'm just hoping for Lance and Fernando to finish races.
Well, yeah, well.
But so day one morning session, Lewis, for the first time, was in the Ferrari. Not for the first time, but like for the first time for us.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, I didn't really like Lewis's helmet, but then I saw him in the car. I went, okay, the yellow and the red do not clash. I thought it was going to clash, but it looks good in the car.
Yeah,
it's gone up on my rating.
It's Ferrari yellow.
But there wasn't really like any yellow on the car or the suit, so I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. But it worked.
Oscar Piastri was he was in the morning. Poor him. If you know anything about Oscar, he is not a morning person.
Also, Carlos was in the morning session for the first time in a Williams. Can we talk about Williams for a second?
Yeah, they were moving pretty fast.
They were on fire.
Which
they weren't last year. They weren't like very fast last year, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's a better car than last year.
I don't think that could be that difficult.
Well, yeah. They also have a title sponsor now, so they have a little more money.
Only a little
Maybe
bit.
In Australia they'll bring a spare chassis this time.
So sorry to you, Logan Sargent. That was the beginning of the end.
But if we're really talking about a fast car, McLaren was like crazy fast. And everyone's like, oh, it doesn't reflect how the season's going to be, but I really do feel like McLaren's going to be the front
You got
runner.
to take a little bit from it, you know. It's not like
it's not going to be like, oh, McLaren's super fast. Oh, they're in the back of the grid. I do think Ferrari wasn't going their top speed.
Yeah, I do
they were
think
doing
Ferrari
strategies and getting comfortable, and I think
a little bit.
I think Mercedes was too. I do think Red Bull reflected.
You're holding out on a Mercedes champion fight, though.
Yeah. I will say, I think I judged Kimi Antonelli a little too soon.
Well, you know, I don't really know. I mean, we saw him. We saw his first F2 win.
We saw his first win. I'm going to be honest, though. I have to admit this. When I was watching F2, I was half asleep because we were up in F4 in the morning. I was like, I don't know who is who. I do not know who's who.
I had multiple naps on that concrete ground, so
but yeah, I was like, there's no way he's gonna do well for Mercedes, and he did top the time. I remember I woke up in the morning session and the top of the time was Kimi Antonelli and then Liam Lawson.
Yeah.
I was like, what in the world? I didn't know that most of the rookies were in the morning, so I was like, what in the world? What happened? Where's Charles? Where's like Lando or Oscar? But
where's everyone else? I think
where is everyone?
So crazy that we saw Kimi's first F2 win at Silverstone, and then in a year later, I'll be watching his like first British Grand Prix halfway through his Formula One first season.
I shouldn't say as a racing driver, but as a Formula One driver.
Yeah.
That'll be I think it'll be very interesting to see Kimi in the car like during a race. Because we've only ever seen him in free practices and like winter testing and then like obviously F2 and F3. But it's gonna be very interesting to see how he adapts, because the cars aren't that much different. It's just you need a lot more strength and stamina for an F1 race versus an F2 race. So it'll be very interesting to see.
Our last rookies were Oscar and Logan. And if you look at the difference in Oscar in his rookie season and Oscar now, even like you can just
his neck.
Yeah, it's insane.
Okay, I know you don't care about Aston Martin, but I do. And someone listening probably does. Aston Martin, though very minor, it does look like they're improving the car, which I mean, once again, can't be that difficult. We did have the stomach bug in our garage this weekend, but we are on the up foot. Also, Adrian Newey hasn't touched the car yet. Tomorrow, Monday, March 3rd, will be his first day with Aston Martin, and he's like, I want to get to know the 2025 car to see what I can improve for the 2026 car. I am so excited for Adrian Newey. I'm putting all of my eggs in one basket. But going back to the rookies, Lawson, they actually all seemed to be struggling, but Lawson and Hajar seemed to be struggling the most this session. And I don't know if it was the car or they were just not expecting it. Lawson I get, because he was in a V-carb, the back of the grid on fire, and then he was put in a Red Bull. I would be like, what am I driving? It's like putting Ollie in the Ferrari for his first F1 car and him being like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Like,
that man's just driven a Haas, so
but yeah, Isaac, we didn't see much of Bortoletto because Sauber was so slow.
I feel bad for Hulkenberg, you know.
he was just improving with Haas, and he was finally getting a car, and now he's...
Yeah.
And did you see that their engine for 2026, they're expecting Sauber to be like 10 times slower than they are right now with the new engine? I was like, I'm so sorry to
But
Hockenheim.
that's gonna be borderline illegal, like
Yeah.
illegal.
Yeah, it's going to be really unsafe too. I also really feel bad for Bortoletto because he's a really good driver. Like if you watched him in F2, he is so talented and a very good driver, and he's just not going to be able to show it in Sauber, and it's going to be like Zhou Guanyu, who's an amazing driver and just couldn't show it because he didn't have the car, so nobody will want to sign him. But can we speak about women in motorsport for a second?
Yeah.
I almost cried when I saw Laura Mueller.
Oh.
I almost cried hearing her saying, I don't remember what her first words, but it was something about like the trajectory of whatever Esteban Ocon. She's like, yeah, we're checking. And I was like, oh, it's a woman. It's a woman in motorsport. I'm so excited for her. And I know it's just, everyone's like, well, it's just Haas, but like, it's still a big step. And it's still a big for a woman to be on a radio throughout the race.
Just because it's not like your big team like Ferrari or McLaren or Red Bull doesn't mean that it's not important.
Yeah, like it's so exciting because Haas is on the up foot and they're getting better, they're not getting worse.
Yeah.
Like she is going to help the team. And it's not going to be like, well, the car sucks, I can't do much. Like the car actually is improving. So Ocon's actually going to be like, shout out to my engineer. She made this all possible. Like kudos to Esteban Ocon too, because I know he's going to work with her because he's worked with a lot of women in like karting and stuff like that. Like I'm so glad it's him.
Yeah.
But also the one big thing that happened in this session in day one was the power outage.
Yeah. At least it wasn't groundhogs this time.
It just went black. I was at work and I just had it up like on the live time, and my boss was like, oh, somebody crashed, it stopped, the race stopped. And I was like, who is it? And I was like, oh, it's just a power outage, because it just showed the Ferrari garage like this.
Yeah. Like, you guys don't have backup generators or anything?
Like, what?
Like, you guys are the pinnacle of motorsports and you don't have backup generators at your track for the lights.
Neither did Montreal, though.
Well, yeah, but it's
like
stupid.
What? I'm so confused.
Like,
I was so confused.
You need backup power supplies if you're a venue for that.
Did we just not pay the power bill? Like, what? But that lasted for an hour. Imagine being a driver being like, oh my gosh, I just want to go eat my dinner.
Like, it's just like, I don't know. Well, I did see, I saw some people arguing about the difference in time lost from the power cuts and being in the pits at garages and whatever, to the other driver on the same team being like, oh, it's an hour compared to this driver's half an hour time loss. I'm like, it's testing.
Yeah.
It's also 3 days.
It's so funny seeing people complain. Like there's for Fernando Alonso, when day 3, when Lance got sick and Fernando did the morning session, Fernando fans are like, oh, Lance just doesn't want to run in the morning, like he wants to sleep in, he's probably drunk. And I was like, no, he's literally throwing up. He has the stomach bug.
Like
it is practice. And they're like, Fernando won't ever get to practice at night. I'm like, when did he first get into F1? It's not his rookie season.
yeah,
I would hope he knows how to drive at night.
It's not like he's never driven a car before.
Like, what? People like take winter testing so seriously. I'm like, it's really more for the. I get the drivers have to get comfortable with the car, but like day 3, they should be somewhat comfortable.
It's, you know, they've had seat fittings and they've had like test runs at their home track and, you know, Barcelona, and they've had, so they should be comfortable, especially by day 3, because guess what? They're getting in the car for real in 2 weeks.
Like, come on. But
we've nearly made it, people.
The top 3 for the first day was Lando, George, and then Max. And then Charles was like right after them. But like, I will say, I was like, yeah, expected that. Those are the top runners.
Well,
like the top 4, I was like, expected. Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull. It wasn't really that shocking. But that means we move on to day 2. Day 2 was rainy. Which they apparently, since they started testing in Bahrain or driving in Bahrain, they never had rain while they were on track. Like, it happened right after they left or right before they came, but they never had it on track. So they were like, oh, no one's going to bring tires because we don't need to rain. Aston Martin and Sauber were the only two that had intermediate tires. We did something right, folks. Aston Martin did something right.
I just
the bar is in hell.
just because it's never rained while you've been on track there before, it doesn't mean it's not never going to happen.
But Lewis was the fastest in the morning. He did struggle a little bit, but he still got fastest. It seems that a lot of the drivers, not just Lewis, were struggling. Like Carlos, Oscar, George was struggling, Max was struggling. Like, everyone was struggling. Not Max, Liam, sorry. Max wasn't driving this day. But George did have an issue. He went off and then he got debris in his car that he had to take off.
Well, I don't remember what day it was, but Oscar did have to ask he was like, what's that between my legs? Which is very Sebastian Vettel of him. But it was a screwdriver that the mechanic had left in the cockpit.
Speaking of Oscar, the morning session is when this big issue happened. Hülkenberg and Oscar collided. They were both at fault. Hülkenberg turned in. And he's like, I didn't see Piastri. I was like, didn't you just drive by him? How did you not? I would assume if I had just passed a driver.
Oh, yes, I didn't see him. Anyway.
And then also Oscar did take the corner wide, so they were both at fault. And they had no damage, regardless of what some people said. They had no damage.
The cars were just taken in for a check.
Yeah. And then there was no Max this day. It was all Liam Lawson, so he could get comfortable with the car and get used to the morning and the night sessions. However, he did not run in the morning because Red Bull had a water pressure issue. So that's unfortunate for Liam Lawson. But he did seem very comfortable in the car in that afternoon. So maybe he didn't need the morning session.
Hopefully not.
And then Carlos was in for Williams. It was only Carlos, and he knows that car.
He was fast.
Yeah, and then in the afternoon, it was a lot of rookies. So it was Ollie, Jack, Kimmy. They all seemed to be struggling, and not just the rookies. Charles had spun off. Lance,
he did a little pirouette, didn't he? Charles.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I remember I was That was my day off from work, and I texted you. I was like, Charles just wanted to be a ballerina.
Yeah.
I will say Jack locked up pretty badly on a turn, and he basically flattened his tires. So they kind of lost a pair of tires, but it seemed to be the corner that everybody was struggling on. I don't remember which commentator said it, but it was like, oh, that doesn't look good for Jack doing it. And I was like, okay, Oscar, Lando, Charles, Lance, Kim, everyone was going off on that corner. It just happened that Jack hit the brakes harder.
I do feel bad for him. Especially
after the Drive to Survive scene where Flavio went, I control every inch of you.
Yeah, that's creepy.
I'm like, that's terrible. Do you know the TikTok trend going around? It's like, someone's watching me. It's my anxiety. I'm like, that would be a perfect scene to put that over.
And
he probably has the most pressure.
Not being included in the
Oz GP.
Yeah.
And they're like, we didn't have a photo. And then everyone's like, yeah, but he was in the promo for the tickets. So you do have a photo. You just...
And like, look, I understand, obviously Oscar's there.
I get Oscar. I get Charles because of the whole Oscar-Charles thing. But who's the third? Was it Lewis? Let me look it up.
It could be Lewis because it's obviously his first race in Ferrari. And also the title is the Lewis... Is the Louis Vuitton... you know what I'm trying to say? The Louis V fashion house, which is what Lewis
it's just Oscar and Charles. And then Charles's helmet. Which was... It's an interesting choice. But, yeah. I feel also like... Franco's biggest sponsor just signed with Alpine.
Yeah.
Like, it's very obvious they want Franco in that seat, and they just didn't get him fast enough.
Yeah, and then you can't...
And Jack... I just feel so bad.
Well, you can't kick him out.
Well, you could. But then he could sue you.
Yeah.
I really hope he does very well, or at least matches Pierre, or does better than Pierre, because then he can be like, okay, why are you kicking me out?
Yeah.
I think they should replace Pierre Gasly. Sorry.
I think Pierre would feel bad for doing, because that's exactly what happened to
with
him.
Red Bull.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really don't think... I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic if they do drop Jack. Because
for sure.
Pierre's like, yeah, I've been in this situation.
I don't think that will sit well with him at all.
No. But we shall see. But the top of the times for day 2 was Carlos, Lewis, and Charles. Which, can I tell you, when they were like overall fastest with Carlos Sainz, I was like, am I reading this right? Hello?
I don't know what they've put in that Williams, man.
They put Carlos Sainz in the Williams. They also put 2 very experienced drivers who drove for Red Bull into a car that used to be a Red Bull, basically. Like,
I think this season's going to be very interesting.
I think they're going to be the top of the midfield. I do think Williams is going to... Unless they like have so much damage and they lose a lot of money and then they can't fix an upgrade car.
I mean, if we're going off last season, they
also didn't have a title. They didn't have a title sponsor last season either, though. So like,
yeah, but like, just because you've got a new word in front of your team name does not necessarily mean.
But they have more money. But, this is a little information about Aston Martin, and for people who think Lance Stroll should not be in F1, Lance Stroll was within 1 second of Carlos's time. And Fernando Alonso was like 5 below Lance. Just saying. Lance can drive. Lance is a driver. He's there for a reason. Thank you. But that turns us to day 3. McLaren got faster overnight somehow.
I reckon they were definitely sandbagging on day 1 and 2.
I will say though, apparently there is a anonymous complaint
that they're cheating.
I wonder who that anonymous complaint is. But it's that their rear wing is too bendy, like too flexible. I was like, why are we focusing
that was
on
the complaint. That was the complaint
last year too.
Yeah. Be original. Pick something new.
But I will say they put Lando in the car and he was still struggling a little more than Oscar, but he was still marginally quicker than anybody else on the track, which is terrifying because imagine if he didn't go off the track. He probably would have been faster. I just think it's going to be a very tight season, like tighter than last year even.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like Red Bull has fallen from grace a little bit. And it's really who's going to take it. And I will say McLaren has never, in the past like 10 years, if they've gotten to the top one season, they have fallen drastically the next season. Like, it doesn't seem like they can keep it up. And I think they have the car for it this year. I don't think they have the team for it. I think they're not going to pick
world champion, please.
They're not going to pick a first driver. They have said it before, and it's going to hurt them. We've seen it with Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. We've seen it with Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen. We've seen it with...
Don't bring Mark Webber into Piastri's house.
We've seen it with Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Like, we have seen them not picking a first driver. It's the same with Ferrari. They're like, oh, we don't pick a first driver. I'm like, you need to. You don't have to tell the fans you have, but you need to pick a first driver. Or it's going to show on track. Which is why I think it's going to be a Mercedes one too. Because they've obviously picked their first driver in George Russell. Rightfully so. But anyways. They did have a red flag this year. I meant this session. Because a tour bus, ended up on track.
Listen, Formula 1 is the most unserious sport known to man.
What do you mean the 2 red flags we've had was a power outage and a tour bus getting on track? And you're telling me this is the pinnacle of motorsport? I'd get it if it was like Monaco or Baku or something where there's a street, but you're not even in a street.
No, like, how are you there?
Who let you on the track? Wasn't it blocked?
Were all the signs and, like, what? I don't understand. Like, how do you get there?
Honestly impressive of that bus driver. He's like, you want a tour? I've got you. F1 drivers are going to be flying by you. Buckle in. But Max was in Red Bull all day. He was struggling. He spun. He saved it. It was hot. Thank you. And we did get some racing on track. Kimi Antonelli raced Alex Albon. Alex Albon did go in an interview at, I didn't know we were racing, but Kimi did race Alex Albon.
I mean, you know, Kimi's just trying it out, but really...
I really think Kimi was just trying to figure out the car, so it wasn't like he was intentionally racing.
Well, no. I think Alex would probably leave Kimi for dust in a real race situation. I mean...
But it was exciting to see.
Alex's double overtake last year.
But Lance was sick in the morning. So Fernando went in for the morning session. Everyone was upset, thinking Lance was just not wanting to drive in the morning. He went into the beginning of the afternoon session, literally radioed in, "I'm going to throw up in my helmet. Can Fernando come and take over?" And so Fernando did get the PM session. And he was happy. He was happy with the car. Let me tell you, last year winter testing, he was not happy with the car. He refused to go into a session last year.
Smiles all around from the Ferrari garage. Lewis
Rosie and I are thriving right now.
Charles is... Oh, I think Charles is about 5 years younger if you've seen him recently. He looks...
Can we also talk about how it's about Charles in the Drive to Survive trailer? Everyone was going through it. And then Charles goes, "We are the Kardashians of Formula One."
He's very unserious.
He's so unserious. But also, yeah, Ferrari did look very good. But I will say they looked good last year. So also kind of a contender I wasn't I was sort of expecting, but I wasn't expecting that fast, was Alpine. Pierre went fastest for a long time.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. But
I think Flavio
sold his soul to the devil. I know there were some pretty interesting things that happened with Fernando Alonso when he was in Renault with Flavio, but now I'm 100% convinced Fernando Alonso was not the problem. It was Flavio. No one blamed Fernando Alonso again. But
it's creepy, man.
Speaking of Alpine, Jack was, I think he was on a flying lap, and Lando was on a cooling lap, and Jack veered off, and he was like, "Oh, I was blocked by the McLaren," and I was like, "Listen, I'm all here for believing the rookie and rooting for the rookie to stay in, but I will say there was about 5 car lengths between you and Lando Norris, even if you stayed on the track. So why did we go on the runoff?
And also, there's no point lying when there's so many camera angles.
Love you, Jack, but
we've got the on-car camera.
Speaking of rookies, Haas, what did you do to Ollie Behrman's car? Why was his bodywork flying off?
Listen, they clearly haven't read Newey's book, How to Build a Car.
Haas was also, everyone's like, Haas is the team to watch. Haas is the team to watch. The overall 3 days, the slowest cars were the Saubers, and then right above the Saubers, Haas.
I have my faith in them.
I think they're gonna improve. Their upgrades are gonna upgrade, but right now it's not looking like it.
I reckon they're gonna cook this season.
Yeah, I think they're gonna be actually good. But the top 3 for that day was George Russell, Max Verstappen, and then Alex Albon. I think this is going to be a good season for Williams. I don't think they're going to be fighting for podiums, but I do think they're going to be fighting for the top of the midfield.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think it's going to be Haas versus Williams. And throw Alpine in there.
Sort of. Depends.
Yeah. Alpine the second half.
Pierre clearly knows what he's doing, but it's whether...
It's going to be Pierre versus Esteban again. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, Pierre clearly knows what he's doing, but does Jack and the other reserve drivers?
Jack is one of the best rookies that has come out of Formula 2. I think so is Ollie Behrman and Gabriel Bortoleto.
It could be interesting.
So sorry, Kimmy. Kimmy, you don't have the experience. Gabriel Bortoleto is also one of the only drivers in F2 to win consecutive back-to-back seasons from F3 to F2. George Russell and Charles Leclerc are the other two on the grid right now who's done it.
No, Oscar as well.
Oscar too. They didn't say Oscar, but you are right. So it is going to be very interesting to see what Gabriel can pull out of the Sauber.
So notice how it's all my men or mine.
But the overall fastest of the 3 days was Carlos Sainz with a 1:29.348. A Williams, everybody. A Williams.
Don't you think it's interesting that they do testing in Bahrain, but we're not opening in Bahrain this year? Wouldn't it just be easier to keep the cars in Bahrain?
Yeah, but it's...
What do I know?
It's because everybody was complaining that would have to be on a Saturday instead of a Sunday because of the holiday. Religious holiday. So they're going to Bahrain after the holiday so they can race on Sunday.
After Ramadan, yeah.
But I think they could test in Barcelona and start in Barcelona, but that's just me. But do you know the car that had the most laps? With 458 laps in total.
Fucking hell, who?
Mercedes. Mercedes was really like, okay, guys, listen, we can't have Lewis Hamilton outdoing us. We need to figure out this car fast.
Toto Wolff is bitter.
George Russell's like, every time he's asked about it, he's like, I'm so happy for Lewis. Lewis is great. Like, it's what he deserves. It's obviously what he's wanted his entire career, and he's finally getting it. And then Toto Wolff's like, he'll never go to Ferrari. He'll never succeed.
Toto Wolff is in...
I don't associate with this person.
Toto Wolff is in denial. Yeah. Where George has reached acceptance.
Well, also, I feel like George is still a driver, and like if you ask him if you could be on any team, it was all your choice. You can just take any team. He's gonna say Ferrari.
Everyone does. Alex did at the Williams. I'm saying
Lynn. That's when Lynn lost it.
Yeah.
Like for Lynn. But that would be a crazy lineup.
Yeah.
Alex Charles. Oh, I fear for Lynn. If it's ever Alex Charles.
She, you know.
I would feel fear. But like I think also Toto Wolff is going to be the reason Kimi Antonelli doesn't do well.
I think so.
Toto has so much pressure on this 18-year-old kid who's done one season of F2, and he goes, you're going to replace Lewis Hamilton, and you better be as good as him.
Yeah, like, that kind of pressure is insane.
I'd be like, excuse me, I need to finish high school.
Actually, I have a maths exam on that day.
I just can't imagine what Kimi is going to think. And I know George is going to be like, listen, block it all out. Just drive.
But that's easier said than done. Yeah. Kimi better have the best sports psychologist out there. Yeah. Well, actually, I bet George referred him because I think George has a really good one because George always seems
good,
happy.
George is also really big on taking care of the drivers. Like obviously, with the Drivers Association, now that Carlos is co-president, which everyone's like, oh my gosh, Carlos is gonna fix it. I'm like, excuse me, time out. George Russell. Everyone's like, George Russell is such like an FIA brat. Like he's going to the FIA. Carlos is now going to be doing that. Everybody.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And also, like, George running it on his own is like really unusual. Normally, it was like 3 drivers. Yeah. So the fact that George was running it on his own for 3 years?
Yeah. Which, like, honestly, if you think about it, it was Sebastian Vettel and George Russell, and then Seb retired. Like, who would have replaced Seb?
Yeah.
I would have been like Lewis maybe, but Lewis was like, I don't want that. They're never gonna listen to me.
Which is true.
Which is true. Who else on the grid? Fernando? I love you, Fernando, but I would not take you seriously in a meeting. I am so sorry.
I think,
I would have said, like, Danny Rick, but he had his own issues going on.
Yeah.
We don't speak about those issues, though. Because I will get violent. But that's it for winter testing.
See you in 2 weeks.
Australia. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Who are you hoping for Australia? Why am I even asking?
That's a stupid question, and you know it.
Who's your podium? Dream podium?
For Australia, Oscar to be the first one to win his home race. Charles, obviously, I need that in there. George.
Knew it. Mine is not yours. Sorry.
Well, yeah.
I wouldn't mind if Oscar won.
No Australian has won the Oscar Grand Prix before.
Daniel Ricciardo, it should have been you. I'm hoping beyond hope. I don't care what order. Max, George, and Fernando.
Oh my god, what are you gonna say?
Fernando.
Be for real.
Okay, weirder things have happened.
When?
Like, okay, never mind. Okay, just Adrian Newey will fix the car before Australia, and I'm gonna get a Fernando Alonso podium. I literally don't care if it's P3. I will be crying like it's P1. So, anyways, that was it. And we shall see you in Australia.
See you in Australia.
I'm so excited.